A man and woman with 8 beautiful kids. On the outside, their life looked perfect, a big, happy family in a quiet Utah neighborhood. One morning, everything changed. Michelle MacNeill was found unresponsive in the bathtub. No bruises, no wounds, nothing to explain what happened. The police didn't suspect a thing. Doctors said it was natural causes. Everyone moved on. Everyone except her daughter. Because days before she died, Michelle had quietly told her, "If anything happens to me, don't trust your dad." That sentence changed everything. Her daughter couldn't let it go, so she started watching her father closely. She uncovered something terrifying. Why would a man murder his wife, the mother of his children? And how did one daughter, against all odds, prove the truth when no one else could see it? Michelle Summers was born on January 15th, 1957, in Concord, California. She was raised in a warm, loving Mormon home in Concord, California. She was graceful, kind, and full of heart. In 1976, she was crowned Miss Concord, not just for her beauty, but for her poise, charm, and kindness. Then came Martin MacNeill. He was confident and charismatic, with just enough mystery to draw Michelle in. They met at a church event, and within a month, they were married. It looked like a love story. Together, they built a big family, 4 biological kids, and later, 4 adopted daughters. Their home looked like the picture of happiness. Michelle was the emotional anchor, Martin the successful doctor. But behind the scenes, things were unraveling. Martin could be controlling. He cared deeply about his image, always polished, always impressive. But in private, his temper flared. He had affairs. One, in the 90s, ended in scandal. Michelle was heartbroken. Martin responded by threatening suicide. It became a cycle. Over the years, Martin changed, not just emotionally, but physically. He became obsessed with his looks, lost weight, tanned constantly, and spent more and more time away from home, Michelle noticed. So did her daughter, Alexis. They looked into his phone records and saw the same number again and again, late at night, odd hours. The name? Gypsy Willis. When Michelle confronted him, he brushed it off. Then came the suggestion, plastic surgery. He said it might boost her confidence, maybe even help their marriage. On April 3rd, 2007, Michelle went in for surgery. Martin made sure her prescriptions were filled, a risky mix of strong medications. Alexis, a med student at the time, was immediately concerned. Michelle's response chilled her. "If anything happens to me, make sure it wasn't your father." A week later, on April 11th, Alexis called her mom. Michelle sounded good, better even. It was the last time they ever spoke. Later that morning, Martin picked up little Ada from preschool. They returned home to silence, too quiet. Martin told Ada to go upstairs. Moments later, her scream echoed through the house. Michelle was in the bathtub, still, submerged. Martin, recovering from an injury, hobbled up the stairs, drained the tub, and told Ada to find a neighbor. Then he called 911. But the call wasn't panicked. It was strange, cold, rushed. He gave few details, hung up abruptly, and forced the dispatcher to call him back. Twice. By the time help arrived, Michelle was gone. At the hospital, Martin wasn't crying. He was yelling, blaming, pointing fingers, even at Michelle, unconscious on the stretcher. Then he called Alexis. His voice was flat. "Your mother's been found unconscious in the tub." No emotion, no hesitation, just cold. At the hospital, Michelle was pronounced dead. Cause, natural. Heart issues, high blood pressure. No signs of foul play. Case closed. But for Michelle's children, especially Alexis, that explanation didn't sit right. She remembered the drugs, the warning, and the way Martin had acted. She called her sister Rachel from the airport and begged her to go to the house and find the medications. But when Rachel searched, the pills were gone. Martin claimed he didn't know what happened. Maybe the police took them. Maybe they were misplaced. Then their brother Damien confessed. Martin had told him to flush all the pills down the toilet. Why? Martin said the sight of them made him feel worse. To Alexis, that was no coincidence. And then Martin made another move that raised even more suspicion. He planned Michelle's funeral just 3 days after her death. Fast. Too fast. And he barred Michelle's family from attending. Told them outright, if they showed up, he'd call the police. For someone mourning his wife, Martin didn't seem broken. He seemed in control, calculated. And someone unexpected showed up at the funeral, a young brunette woman. No one knew her. No one asked. But soon, her identity would become very clear. Days after the funeral, Martin said he needed help around the house. With 4 young girls still at home, he claimed he couldn't manage alone. Alexis offered to come home. She was willing to take time off from med school. Martin refused. He said he already had someone. Her name, Gypsy. Alexis and Rachel froze. Gypsy Willis. Martin admitted it was her, but insisted there was no affair. Within 2 weeks of Michelle's funeral, Gypsy moved in. She didn't cook, didn't clean, didn't help with the kids, but she doted on Martin like she was already his wife. Just 3 months after Michelle died, Martin took Gypsy to meet her parents, declared she was the love of his life, proposed. Alexis confronted him. In response, he banned her from the house, told the other kids not to speak to her again. But Alexis didn't back down. She and Rachel started a blog. They shared their mother's story. Soon, messages started pouring in. Women who claimed to have had affairs with Martin while he was married. They took everything to the police. Not enough for a murder charge, yet. But it got attention. Investigators began digging, and what they found was unbelievable. Martin MacNeill, the successful doctor, had never graduated high school. He used a fake diploma to get into college and later medical school. Early in his marriage, he was arrested for fraud, opening bank accounts in dead people's names, writing $36,000 in bad checks. He spent just 180 days in jail. Still became a doctor. He claimed to be a military vet, discharged after saying he heard voices telling him to kill. Still, he collected a $3,000 monthly veteran's pension for 30 years. In 2009, Martin and Gypsy were arrested, not for murder, but identity theft. They sent their adopted daughter, Giselle, back to Ukraine, and used her identity to create a fake person, Gillian MacNeill. With that fake name, Gypsy applied for credit cards, loans, all to escape her debts. That opened the door. Detectives re-examined Michelle's death. Toxicology showed multiple powerful drugs in her system. Drugs Alexis knew she didn't need. Drugs only Martin had access to. Alexis believed he crushed them and put them in her food. Martin's story about finding Michelle didn't match the physical evidence. Ada, the youngest daughter, said Michelle was fully submerged, but Martin said she was slumped over the tub, legs out. That detail didn't add up. He claimed he tried CPR, but paramedics said a massive amount of water poured out of Michelle's lungs, proof no CPR had been done. Even a neighbor confirmed Michelle was found submerged, face up. Then came the turning point. In 2012, just months after Martin was released from prison for fraud, he was arrested again, this time for murder. His trial began in 2013. Witnesses painted a horrifying picture. A former lover testified that Martin once claimed to have killed his own brother by pushing his head underwater after a suicide attempt. He even offered to kill her husband. One of his daughters said he'd talked about a suicide pact with her. and Gypsy's former roommate dropped the bombshell. Martin and Gypsy had plotted Michelle's death before it happened, joking about poison, talking about cutting Michelle's brakes. After 11 hours of deliberation, the jury found Martin MacNeill guilty of first-degree murder. He was sentenced to life in prison, but prison wouldn't hold him forever. On April 6, 2017, Martin was found dead near the prison greenhouse. He had used chemicals to take his own life. There were no cameras nearby. He left no note, no confession. And one final twist, after Michelle's death, Martin rewrote his will. Each of his children would receive just $1. Everything else went to Gypsy. Even in death, Martin tried to erase his children, but Alexis and her siblings refused to let the truth die with him. They kept fighting. And thanks to them, the world knows who Martin MacNeill really was, and what he did to the woman who trusted him most. If you liked the video, hit the like button and make sure you subscribe our channel.